Here you can see a number of different adhesives that can be used to upholster fabrics for your boards. My personal favorite is the 3M High Strength Spray Adhesive. This is a very high odor product, so you do want to be sure to use this outdoors or in the spray booth here on campus. Another tool I rather enjoy is the Scotch Adhesive Transfer Tape. It's much better than your typical double stick tape. It has an archival quality, so it will do a very good job holding your boards together for a long period of time. Surprisingly enough, we will show you how to upholster with duct tape, but we will not be doing a demonstration with rubber cement. This is more of a desperation product. You have no other adhesives in the house and you need to get something stuck to your board. It doesn't have long-term holding ability, so it's not recommended. We do recommend either a tacky glue or a craft glue. However, you're going to need either pins or clamps to work with these products and hold the glue while it cures, so you don't have to. And in that case, I actually prefer to use a hot glue just because it's a little bit more quick than the craft or tacky glue. You do want to make sure you're working with a high temp glue stick and be very cautious with this product, as obviously it gets very hot. So these are the adhesives we're going to be demonstrating in this video. Here you can see a number of the cutting tools that we will be using while upholstering our fabrics. The first pair of scissors are pinking shears. Pinking shears are a really nice tool. They have this great zigzag cutting blade that helps to reduce the amount of fray fabric can experience. However, these are a little expensive, so you might find that those aren't something you add into your toolkit right away. Do suggest getting a very nice pair of fabric only scissors. These are by Singer, and you can see I've actually marked mine fabric only, just to remind myself that these don't get used for other parts of my project. They're only used when I'm cutting fabrics. To help make sure that that happens, I always include just a regular pair of scissors in my box. That way I'm not tempted to use my fabric only scissors. I have a number of X-Acto blades that I'll be working with. The first is your standard pen blade. In the center of the handle is a place to slip in the blade. Not a big fan of this tool simply because I find that these little blades are very flexible and they tend to bend at the most inopportune times. So for that reason, I'm a much bigger fan of a box cutter style blade. You can see this has an adjustable setting that allows the blade to slide out or in. Preferable to keep it in that in setting when not in use, just to protect yourself. They come in a lot of different sizes. So for more refined cutting that I need to do, I'll have the little blade, and then when I need to make sure I have no bend in the blade, I'll use the larger box cutter style. Whenever you're working with any cutting tools, you always want to make sure you have a self-healing mat and a corked back ruler. The corked back ruler is just that. It has a ruler on the front side and a cork backing on the back. Works really good to help make sure the blades stay right up against the edge, they don't cut into your measuring device, and then the cork backing helps keep the ruler in place against fabrics or papers. I typically will have an architect scale out for measuring, but you want to be very careful and not cut against this. It is plastic, so using a metal cork back ruler is a much better option when cutting. When upholstering fabrics, there's a few key things we're looking for. The first being, with the striped fabric or any fabric with a pattern, you want to make sure that the edge of the pattern or the stripe aligns with the edge of the material you are upholstering to. You can see in this example that the edge does not align, and it's actually very distracting when you look at the pattern. Another thing that we're looking at and really focusing on is how crisp your corners are. This example here has two really nice corners and two really not so nice corners. I would say in this example that all of the corners are about the same quality, not right where I want it, but getting close. And then here in this example, again, these top two corners look pretty good, but these bottom two corners are bubbling out in a few areas that wouldn't be as ideal. What I love is that all of these examples are done differently. I bet you would have never guessed I'd use duct tape. So this first example is done with hot glue, and I've folded in all of the edges first, and then I've gone ahead and folded over each of the corners. With the duct tape method, it's a slightly different execution. First, the corners are folded in, and then all of the edges are brought in. This final method is the trimming method, and it's actually the most difficult to execute because you do have to be very careful at each of the corners, but it does typically produce the best results. So here, the edges will be folded in, the corners will be trimmed, and then glued into place. And you can see the difference in bulk here. I've used a fold over method versus a trimming method in this example, and there's quite a bit of bulk created in this corner. These are the examples we're going to demonstrate in just a moment, but the most important thing to see is that the back looks terrible, but the front, hopefully, has a nice aligned edge and a really well created corner so that each piece that you upholster looks fairly identical in size and form. These all look just a little bit different, and so they could definitely be improved when going as a final piece on a board. Our next example is the taping method, and you can see that here I'm using duct tape. Like the previous example, I went ahead and applied a thin layer of spray mount to the front side of the foam core and adhered it to the back side of the fabric, just again to help make sure that the fabric doesn't pull or distort as I try to wrap these corners. I still need to be aware of it because there is going to be a certain amount of give, but at least it helps keep things in place for me a little bit better. As you can see, I've gone ahead and taped all 3 corners, and I'm going to do the 4th. And really all I'm doing is taking this at a 45-degree angle and pulling the corner in as tight as possible without distorting the edge of the foam core. And then I'm using a small square piece of duct tape, getting it nice and tight to the fabric and using that to pull the fabric into place. I can squish that down, make sure everything's good and tight. Once I have all 4 corners pulled down, I can then do the edges. So I'm going to take each edge and pull the corners out as much as possible and then fold them in as tight as I can. And I want to get this edge here as close to the edge of the foam core as possible. You can see I'm getting a little bit of a bubble effect on this corner, so I'm going to try to pull that out as much as I can. One way that you can help to avoid this is by taking your piece of duct tape first, laying it down underneath your fabric, pretty tight to the edge of your foam core, and then taking the fabric and laying it down and pushing it out into the foam, or excuse me, into the duct tape. Then when you fold over, you can use that to pull as tight as possible and get those edges really square. Before I move on, I'm going to check and make sure, and I think that's actually going to look pretty good, so I'm excited about that. I'll go ahead and do the next edge here. Again, I'm going to take my piece of tape, lay it underneath my fabric, and then get that fabric nice and squished into the duct tape. I do find that the duct tape method works better with more plush fabrics because there's a little bit more for the duct tape to hold on to. Again, we're going to take that edge, pull it as tight as possible without distorting the edge of the foam core. Get that squished down as much as possible and double check my edges. I'm a little concerned about this edge here. You can see it's bubbling just a little bit, but we'll go ahead and proceed, see how it turns out at the end. Maybe make some adjustments as we need it. So now I have my last 2 edges to go, and for this I'm actually going to take smaller pieces of duct tape. These I just took square pieces and tore in half. And what I like about this is it lets me work with just the edge. So instead of trying to get the whole piece down at the same time, I'm just going to work with the edge and get it as tight as possible. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just focus on that corner. You can already tell I don't like that corner. That's not bad. I might have to work that down just a little bit. You can see they're bubbling just here, and I just don't like it. But we'll go ahead and get a piece down the middle just to keep those stripes nice and consistent. And we'll work on our next edge here. So again, I take a square piece and just tear it in half So I'm just working with smaller pieces. I fold out the corners as much as possible. So I want to get them as square as I can. And then work that corner, squish it down, take my other piece, work that corner. Check the center. And that is the duct tape method. Let's go ahead and turn it over, see how we did. Not bad. I knew each of these corners were going to be a little bit difficult to get nice and square. You can see these ones aren't too bad, but these pooch out just a little bit. I can do some work with a little bit of craft glue if I wanted. I can kind of massage them into place, so to speak. But with the duct tape method, you're never going to get those perfectly square corners. The trimming method is probably the only method that's going to guarantee that for you.